All right, welcome everybody. I'm Sadie Everett and I'm the director of the Regional Autism Advisory Council, or RAAC. And RAAC is a part of the IDD Education Center at the University of Cincinnati. I kicked off these RAAC training series last fall, or this past fall, and we're just rolling with it. It's a little bit different starting this spring. I'm trying to do mini series related to one topic and trying to kind of get a deeper dive into something. So this mini series, it's that time of year where everything's falling out of the trees and affecting allergies. Let me clear my throat. um, so this series is taking a bit of a deeper dive into compassionate interventions to support engagement and learning. And we have Dr. Christy Carnahan with us today to present on evidence-based practices to support self-regulation. So I'm going to turn it over to Christy to take it away.
Well, hi, everybody. I am already testing my self-regulation skills because I accidentally just closed the Google screen that I wanted to share with you in a little bit. So I'm like frantically trying to get it open here. I'm going to share my computer screen with you. I'm going to be going between screens in different applications. So if you have any questions or if there's a lag, please let me know. But I am going to share my whole screen with you because of that. Okay, so welcome, and I'm really glad you're here. Today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which
You'll
is
you'll be done with all of them fast if you get it done.
self-regulation, and specifically self-regulation for learners with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So my name's Christy Carnahan, and I am a professor at the University of Cincinnati, and I'm also the director of the IDD Education Center. And I have been a teacher, and I'm a teacher by training, and I've been a teacher since the year 2000. I'm getting old, everybody. Um, and some of what we're going to talk about today, or the majority of what we're going to talk about today, is certainly literature based and it's based in research and evidence. But a lot of the strategies come right from my work with individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, from my own work as a teacher in a classroom, and also as the mom of 3 kids. So kind of framework from which I'm coming with is certainly that global picture of what do we know in the literature about self-regulation, what are evidence-based practices, but really also really practical strategies that come out of my experience with people directly and being in relationship with people with IDD, my life as a classroom teacher, and my work, not work, but my life as a mom. So I'm really excited to be here with you today. Self-regulation is a really important topic. It's really important to me because it is the foundation for success in almost anything. So whether we're talking about academics, meaningful social relationships, work, community engagement, self-regulation is the foundation. So that is, if you are thinking about, if we help people develop skills in any other area, this is probably one of the most important areas because it affects everything else. And if we look at the literature, you can see that self-regulation is directly associated with quality of life and with having meaningful social relationships. So today, what we're going to talk about is, one, what is self-regulation? And there's a lot of debate about about theoretical frameworks that support self-regulation or that help us understand self-regulation. And I've tried to just kind of draw on several of those to give you a real foundational look at what self-regulation means, so you can think about it in your own life and you can share information with other people. Two, we're going to talk about ourselves and what it means to be self-regulated individuals and why that's important for helping other people be regulated. And then we're going to talk about strategies for supporting self-regulation. And I decided to weave a little bit of academic self-regulation in here and then social behavioral self-regulation. And that is very intentional. And I'm doing that because we know that and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but academic interventions can support executive function and social communication self-regulation, and self-regulation, direct targeted interventions can impact or affect academic and executive function self-regulation. So it's all really related. And I think that's really critical. And it's actually one of the things that I find most exciting about my work as a teacher. Okay. Maybe. All right. I'm going to say these. I'm going to be like a broken record with these three things. If you walk away from today with nothing else, I want you to remember these three things. And I'm going to say them at least 3 times. So 1, people develop self-regulation skills when they are calm. When a person is in crisis, it is not when they are developing self-regulation skills. It is not when we're teaching self-regulation skills. We can teach through behavior, we can teach through crises, but that is not our targeted time where we go, oh, that's when I'm going to do my primary self-regulation instruction. We support people in being regulated when they are already regulated. So that's really important. 2, adult self-regulation is essential for student self-regulation or learner self-regulation or just your child self-regulation. Whoever the person is that's kind of leading this situation, we have to be regulated so that other people can be regulated. And then lastly, co-regulation supports learners to develop self-regulation. Now, what the heck does that mean? That means that if a kid is dysregulated or a learner or a young adult is dysregulated or in crisis, the only way that we're going to help them get calm is by 1, regulating ourselves and then supporting them through. So it is very common when a kid gets upset or an individual gets upset that we walk away from them, that we say to them, use your tools. And there are times and places for us to take a break. There are times and places for us to encourage people to use their tools. But co-regulation, helping kids and learners be regulated, is one of the most important factors when we're trying to help students be self-regulated. And there are lots of ways we can promote co-regulation, and we're going to talk about those throughout the session. So 3 critical ideas, and I'm going to keep saying them. 1, this is probably the most important thing. People develop self-regulation when they're already calm. So if you want to teach individuals to be regulated, do it when they're regulated. That can be tricky, and we'll talk about that. 2, adult self-regulation is essential. So we have to, there's a program out there, it's called, I think it's Be Calm. And the primary intervention, it's designed to actually teach adolescents self-regulation skills. And one of the primary foundational components is helping adults be regulated. So I think that's really interesting. And I think we can really learn something from that. And then co-regulation is essential. Again, it can be really stressful when someone's dysregulated for us to keep it together, but that's how we get them to feel safe and know that they can then themselves be regulated. All right, we'll keep coming back to those. Okay. I want to kick off this session by talking about what is self-regulation. So again, this gets into, there are several different theoretical frameworks that help us understand self-regulation, and I'm drawing on several of those here to help us think about what self-regulation means. But if you looked at it in different research articles, you'd see it talked about in lots of different ways. In general, though, this sort of in the middle here, when you think about regulation, self-regulation is regulation of our thoughts, self-regulation of our emotions, and our behavior. And if you notice, those 3 are kind of like a triangle, but the behavior, the thoughts and emotions are the that we call them the cognitive pieces of self-regulation, and then there's the behavioral piece. These kind of go together, thoughts and emotions, and how we and our ability to recognize our thoughts and emotions and be mindful about them has a direct impact on our behavior. And at the same time, how we behave then directly affects our thoughts and emotions. So it's a little bit of a circle, but the most regulated people are the people who are have the ability, who have practiced very often, practice, the capacity to be in the moments, to monitor their thoughts and their emotions and not ride the highs and lows of those, to use strategies that kind of keep those in the middle and recognize that thoughts and emotions come and go. And if you just wait a beat without acting, they will likely change. And that is very easier said than done. There are thousands of people who've spent hours engaged in mindfulness who still struggle with this. So this is sort of like the holy grail, I guess, if you will. And it's just what we're all working toward, to be able to create that space between our thoughts and emotions and our behavior. Sometimes it's talked about before there's an event and a reaction. And can you increase that space between the events, your thoughts and emotions, and your reaction? And that is, again, we're all on a lifelong journey for that, but it's really important as educators that we are giving a lot of thought to, one, how we do that in our classrooms, and two, how we talk to kids about it. So thoughts, emotions, and then behavior. And that, if you kind of try to group those, we have the cognitive aspects, cognitive emotional aspects of self-regulation, and then the behavioral aspects of self-regulation. And then, so those three are kind of the outputs, right? And then down here at the bottom, we have these different factors, and these are just some examples. There are many factors that influence self-regulation. But one, just the first example that I've included here is an environment. So a chaotic environment increases dysregulation. A calm environment increases self-regulation. So if it's loud, if it's kind of disorganized, if there are things that maybe visually are really distracting, for example, that can help. Those can be factors that would help cause us, not help us, but cause us to be more dysregulated. In settings where it's maybe there's some quiet music, it is well organized, there's clear boundaries in an environment that tell me exactly what's going to happen, what I can expect. Those sorts of environments increase our self-regulation. They make us feel calmer, or we could say maybe they increase our ability to use our self-regulation skills. Okay. In the middle here, you see sensory and physical state and sense of security. So some things to think about. One, if you can think about a time where you just felt like you could hear everything in your environment, or something was bothering you, like a tag in your shirt was making you itchy, or maybe it was, for me, really loud noise can be really dysregulating if it's unexpected, if I don't know it's going to come. A baby crying at 3 a.m. can be really dysregulating. So that kind of your sensory system can really affect your ability to be regulated or not. And even if you have well-developed regulation strategies, if it's an overwhelming sensory situation for you, those can go out the window quickly. Our physical state. So if we're tired, if we're hungry, if we're well rested, if we ate healthy food, those are things that can really affect our self-regulation. So in a minute, I'm going to ask you to think about yourselves. If you think about, like, what are the days where you feel better than others, and that maybe you feel even are more aware of your ability to support other people. Often it's because you've had enough water, you've had enough sleep, and you've eaten something healthy. And then the sense of security. You can trust the environment. And that doesn't mean that somebody doesn't have clear expectations with you. It doesn't mean that there aren't boundaries and rules, but it's, I know that I can trust what's going to happen in this setting. I know that this person who is here I know what to expect from their behavior. And because of that, I know what they expect of me. Again, it doesn't mean that we can't have expectations. It just means we need to be clear about those. And then events, input, stimuli. So if something happens in the environment, that can affect our self-regulation one way or the other. There's something that's triggering for you, or even sometimes conversation topics. Well, these days, conversation topics about politics can be especially triggering for people, and just different forms of stimuli. So whether you're really motivated by a topic and interested in a topic can affect your self-regulation. So if you think about a time that you had to learn something and maybe it was a topic of you really were passionate about, that makes you often encourages our self-regulation skills to be kicked in. If it's something we're less interested in, we probably aren't listening. So just keep in mind, so thoughts, emotions, and behavior, it's not all created equal. It's really can be affected by many different things. And here are some examples: the environment, sensory and physical state, the events, input, stimuli in our setting. Now, okay, one thing that is really important for us to develop self-regulation skills, and that's closely related to our self-regulation capacity, is the ability to self-monitor our behavior and engage in self-reflection. So I thought a lot about what kind of example I wanted to use related to this, and I thought I'd share just something about myself that I've learned throughout my career. And a lot of times in meetings, for example, I can get into kind of a pattern where my thoughts can really drive some behavior that I don't love, like verbal behavior in a meeting where maybe I interrupt, or I just really want to I'm pretty forceful with a thought and I want to share it. And I want to get everybody to agree with me, for example. Now, in the moment, if I've planned out ahead, I've been engaged my mindfulness strategies, thought about how I want to show up, that doesn't happen. But if I'm just on autopilot and going, that can really happen. What I think has helped that, not what I think, but what the literature would tell me has really helped that, is this ability to self-monitor, to go, oh, wow, I did that thing. That doesn't mean I'm bad. It just means I need to reflect on it, go back, maybe say, apologize to the person, and then move forward. So, and now I know I don't want to do that again, and I'll be more mindful. So I want you to start to think about something where you've really used your self-monitoring, self-reflection strategy, and how that's helped you then in the future really create that space between those thoughts and emotions, which means we recognize them. Then there's that space before our behavior. So if you've ever caught yourself thinking, oh, I want to say this here in this meeting or to this person, and then you don't because you know what happened last time, or you don't want to repeat that pattern, that's those self-monitoring and self-reflection. Now, for children, for learners, the biggest time of development for both engaging self-regulation related to thoughts and emotions and behavior and building those self-monitoring and self-reflection strategies is that period of adolescence. And so they are ripe for developing skills and really kind of, you see, if you think about the difference between a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old and a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old, surely they're all still impulsive, surely. But that is that time where you can start to really see it grow and develop, especially if they get some just right coaching. Okay, so a couple other big key ideas, I better get moving here, about self-regulation is that we know self-regulation is related to executive function and social skills. So like I said, if you teach kids about self-regulation, you build their executive function and their social skills. If you teach kids about social skills, you support their self-regulation and executive function. Self-regulation also is really critical for self-determination. So if we want people to be able to set goals, engage in goal-directed behavior, and then self-monitor, the foundational skill for that is self-regulation and self-management. It really underlies all of that self-determination, those things we talk about. And it is the foundation for getting people to be able to self-direct their behavior. The last thing I want to say before I ask you to do some kind of get into some self-reflection and put some stuff in the chat is this. Everyone gets upset a lot, every day. almost every day we can get upset. Our goal is not to tell people that they shouldn't get upset. Our goal is not to shame people for feeling upset or having emotions. People should feel their emotions, and we want to support that. Our goal is to simply build skills so that people can manage their emotions and respond to their thoughts so that their behavior allows them to be engaged in their community in a meaningful, inclusive way, whether that community is in a classroom or their neighborhood with friends or at a workplace. So again, please remember that if, I had those 3 key ideas, and this is one that really undergirds it, all 3 of those. Kids can feel, people can feel all kinds of emotions, and those are all acceptable and valid. What we have to do is support their skills so that they don't have to respond to every emotion and every thought in a way that interrupts their inclusion in different environments or can be disruptive to other people. Okay, so I am going to ask you, after I do this, I'm going to stop sharing and just change how I share for a second. But I'm going to ask you to think about self-regulation in your life. I want you to think about 2 times in the past month in which you became upset. So I want you to identify one situation that you handled it really well and a situation when you wish you had handled it differently. Okay. And I want you to think about what level were you when you handled it well? Did you stay at like a 1, 2, or 3? And my guess is when you didn't handle it well, you were probably closer to that 3, 4, 5. What did it look like? How did you feel? And what did you do? Okay, so it could be just on a scrap paper, it could just be in your mind, but I want you to think about one situation when you handled it well and one situation when you handled it differently. Okay, and I'll set a timer for about 1 minute, and then I'm going to ask you to put some stuff in the chat. Sorry, I started talking without unmuting myself. I apologize. Okay, if you're willing, if you could put in the chat, if you could say, what was one situation, what did you do when you handled it well? And in the situation that you wish you handled it differently, you can't tell us exactly, you don't have to tell out yourself completely, but what do you maybe wish you had done differently? I'm going to share an example that happened to me today that made me sort of giggle, is that I was going through this presentation, and there was a huge snafu with a repair in my house. And it's been a repair that we've been going on or we've been dealing with for over a year, like we're approaching 18 months. And so I have the self-regulation PowerPoint open. I'm looking at it and I'm on this slide. And I get on the phone and the person says something to me that was like telling us something we were going to have to do. And I literally just kind of lost my mind. And as I hung up, I thought, well, there you have it, friends. We all get upset every day. It is how we handle those things. Even when we are in our best place, we all make mistakes and wish we would have handled it differently. Thank you, Victoria. Thanks, Josh. Yep, I agree. Applying those strategies that we know in our classrooms at home can be really tricky. Hannah, thank you. Yep. I can definitely had that same kind of issue. So, okay, now what I want you to think about is, what do you think was the difference in those situations? Like, why did one go well and why did one not go as well? And oftentimes, if you can pinpoint why that was the case, it is the key to starting to move, have those times when we don't react as we would like, be fewer and less intense. So think about, what was the underlying factor. So for me, sometimes it can be I'm doing too many things at one time. That is often a factor that decreases my ability to be well regulated and share respond appropriately. And it can also be exhaustion. So those are two really significant triggers for me. For some people that I know, for example, there can be setting events. Like I know a couple young adults with an intellectual disability who, when it's a really intense social situation, that can be especially triggering. They know what to do, but it's harder. Or when there is something I see, and I think this is true for a lot of us, when there's something we see or that we want and it's like right there within reach, but for some reason we can't have it. So those are just some examples of times, things that can make the difference between how we respond. You're going to see this format again at the end of the session. So I want you just to keep this in mind. Kind of, this is really foundational, knowing what we feel, what level we are, what it looks like, okay, on the outside, how we felt, and what it looks like can be what I was doing too. And what we did, that's going to be the foundation for helping other individuals develop their own level self-regulation systems, okay? All right. Okay. Remember those 3 critical concepts. I'm going to say them again to you. 1, people develop self-regulation when they are calm. 2, adult self-regulation is essential for student self-regulation. And 3, co-regulation supports learners to develop self-regulation. So back on this slide, I didn't ask you to do this, but I want you now in your mind to think about a time where you were with a person with an intellectual or developmental disability and you didn't handle the situation as well as you would have, and how you responded and why that might have been the case, okay? And the purpose of this is really to support. I'm asking you to do this because we know, as I said before, self-monitoring and self-regulation can be really critical factors to promote our self-regulation. So start to just kind of get that in your head, and we're going to talk a little bit about co-regulation and what that means. Okay, so what is co-regulation? Let's take a look at this video. Before I press play, I want you to think about sort of what your, let me get this, make sure this is right. Okay, why is it all the way up here? I want you to think a little bit about your roles, and I should have asked you this before maybe, but what is it that you... Oh, I see. What is it that you do, and why would co-regulation be important for you? So if you're a classroom teacher, you're going to think about it through that lens. But if you are a principal or a supervisor, I want you to kind of think about, what is it that, who do you need to co-regulate? Like if you're a supervisor, you might be not co-regulating individuals with lived experience, but your job might be to support educators to be regulated, so that and help them support or help them understand co-regulation. So as we watch this video, I want to ask you just to really come at it from the lens with which you do your work or live life. Sadie, if you can't hear it, please let me know.
I graduated with my bachelor's and master's degree before AI really took off, so I'm really excited to...
You know that feeling when your alarm goes off on Friday morning at 5 a.m. Oh, to turn it off and go back to sleep. But today you have an important early meeting. So you take a deep breath, focus on the goal of completing that project you really care about, and you drag yourself out of bed. This is an example of what scientists call self-regulation. It's the act of managing our thoughts and feelings so we behave in ways that help us reach our goals. Self-regulation keeps you from saying something hurtful out loud to a coworker, like, "That's a really bad idea." Or, when you disagree with someone, self-regulation looks like choosing to communicate calmly and respectfully, because it's more important to you to take good care of that relationship than it is to win an argument. We need self-regulation to stay healthy and to succeed in school or at work, in relationships, and in life as a whole. It's a skill worth focusing on. Some think that self-regulation is something you're born being good at, or not. But this is a myth. Anyone can build self-regulation skills over time, like a muscle. And as we build those muscles, we get better at important things, like managing strong emotions in healthy ways, staying on a task even when it's hard, and considering the perspectives of others so that our relationships can thrive. Research shows that adolescence is a critical window of opportunity for building self-regulation muscles, because just like in early childhood, the brain is growing and building connections based on youth's experiences. This growth really impacts those areas of the brain that support self-regulation. One thing to know is the term self-regulation is misleading, because we don't develop it by ourselves. Its development has much more to do with the people in a person's life and what's going on around them. When a person has nurturing and accepting relationships in supportive environments, self-regulation skills can grow. Whereas harsh or inconsistent relationships and stressful or chaotic environments short-circuit the development of self-regulation. Knowing that, just think of how important your influence can be on an adolescent's life. You have a powerful opportunity to help youth build their self-regulation skills by providing support through something called co-regulation. Co-regulation means having intentional interactions with young people that foster the skills they need to build healthy and happy lives. To co-regulate means to be caring, responsive, and accepting. Create nurturing, safe spaces to practice and learn. Teach and coach skills that build self-regulation muscles, all while practicing your own self-regulation. Co-regulation happens when we intentionally synchronize these actions as we manage our own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So often, adults take a step back from youth as they hit adolescence, when what youth really need during this time is the opposite. There are many ways to grow your skills as a co-regulator. We'll offer 3. First, practice improving your own self-regulation. It's good for you, and it's important to model when working with youth. Second, build warm relationships and nurturing environments. Imagine yourself as a young person in your program. Do you feel cared for, accepted, and known by the staff? Does the environment feel supportive to you as an individual? Third, coach self-regulation skills. Help youth reframe mistakes as opportunities to try something new and to build their self-regulation muscles. When youth practice their skills, they improve those skills and feel better about themselves. These things may be part of your practice already, but now you have a name, co-regulation, for the kind of support you want to provide. And there's always more to learn.
Okay, so 1, practice self-regulation. 2, build relationships. Ask yourself, what would I want, or how would I want someone to treat me if I was in this situation? I'll come back to that. And then 3, provide coaching. One thing that in the later parts of my career, the past 5 to 7 years, that I have really started, and especially even just the past 18 months, I think, seen the real value in is some cognitive coaching related to self-regulation. So saying to things like this to kids: think in your mind, I can control my body. Think in your mind, I'm going to take a deep breath as you take a deep breath. Think in your mind, I can take a deep breath when they're upset. So those are some phrases that on repeat I have started to use and make a part of our actual instructional sessions, especially for individuals who have limited verbal or language skills, and who might have a harder time engaging in like the physical act of taking a deep breath, but they are valuable for lots of different students and kids, even 17 and 18-year-olds who don't have a documented disability can benefit from those kinds of strategies. Think in your mind, I'm safe, I'm calm. Okay, so those are some just that kind of metacognitive coaching is really powerful. Okay. Hey, Sadie, real quick, I did get a message from somebody saying they were having a hard time getting in, but I don't know if we might not be able to do anything about that. So I don't know if anybody's in the waiting room. Okay, coming back to our PowerPoint here. All right, so co-regulation really is critical. And I want you to think about, I think if you are a person who's going to take this information back, that when you get this PowerPoint, the link to that video will be in there. And if you had people engage in an activity around 3 things: 1, how do I regulate myself? 2, what are my, what are my relationships like? And am I responding in a way that I would want somebody to respond to me? And then 3, what is the coaching we're putting in place can be really powerful. Okay, I'm going to skip over this because it's already 4:10 almost, but this slide does talk about kind of self-regulation. If you want more information about the specifics for people with IDD, I'm happy to talk about those kind of one-on-one or at a later time. Okay, in the chat, what I want to ask you to share with us is what are some of the biggest challenges related to self-regulation for your students or the individuals with whom you work or live? Impulse control, thanks, Tana. Yep. Verbalizing their emotions, Katie, absolutely. Thank you. Anxiety, Diane, yeah. Melissa, for sure, a traumatic brain injury can really influence an individual's ability to engage in self-regulation. Okay, thank you. Oh yes, Joan, interoception, for sure, knowing how they feel. And that's going to be a big part of what we're going to talk about towards the end. Oh, I like that one. Navigating large emotions when the environment can't be adjusted, for sure. Okay, thank you. All right, so all of you, I don't know all of you here personally, but I do, for those of you who do that, I do know that many of you work in really diverse settings. So some of you are in schools, some of you are more clinic-based settings, some of you work in community settings with adults. So think about kind of, as I talk about this, think about what this would mean in your setting. And I've alluded to it before. So if you see self-regulation and self-management kind of at the center of our triangle, you'll notice here we have academic instruction, executive function instruction, and social skills instruction. We need to be direct and intentional with our instruction in each of these areas so that students begin, and learners, individuals, begin to understand that the strategies they're learning to support their academic engagement, for example, are actually self-regulation strategies. When we're teaching them how to engage in a conversation with somebody, those are actually self-regulation strategies. So like turn taking, the ability to listen and respond appropriately, that is part of self-regulation. It's being able to monitor your behavior and thoughts and respond to the environment. And one way that we can do it, at a very simple way, is to just be explicit with our language, to say intentionally, oh, we're working on writing. When we're writing, we're also developing self-regulation. That kind of language, even for young kids with significant communication support needs, can be really valuable, and it helps them know what they're learning and why it's important. So we're learning how to organize our thoughts, and maybe we're doing that in a writing activity, but we're learning how to organize our thoughts. That's because when we organize our thoughts, it helps us see them for what they are. It helps us not be so reactive. It helps us actually have a conversation with someone else. So those are that intentionality and that language is really important. Okay, so here are some just general strategies for supporting self-regulation. And one of the most evidence-based practices for promoting self-regulation has nothing to do really with teaching kids skills. It has more to do with how we set up the environment. And these are called antecedent interventions. So one, environmental modifications. And I saw, Victoria, I think it was your comment, that's not always possible, certainly, but a lot of times it is. And what I will say to people if they say, well, we're going to go, I don't know, to our neighborhood pool, and that can be a really chaotic environment. Yes, it can be. But what we can do from an environmental perspective before we get there is make sure that we are coming from a really well-structured environment, that we've given visual supports to know what to expect. And most importantly, we've taught people what to do when they do feel dysregulated in a community setting. And we will can come back to that idea. So in classrooms, clear physical boundaries, not having too many material, making sure we are clear about what's going to happen and where is very foundational. Making sure that it's not too loud. We can use music, but having calming music that's not going to be too heightening or alerting is a really important of how we modify the environment. At home, some environmental modifications can include things just like having visual supports available for kids who need them. I can think about when, especially my youngest son was between the ages of 5 and 10, we would have kind of a calendar or list of what was like a weekly schedule, because we were all always coming and going, and that really helped him be more regulated and less anxious. So it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be, I'm not asking you to make 27 different pictures to represent what's going to happen, but just having some clear visual supports can be really valuable. Even if an individual isn't a reader, writing something down and reviewing it with them can be a really valuable strategy. Visual schedules decrease anxiety for everybody. So for you, those of you here, I'm sure you use visual schedules in your life, whether it's your calendar or your planner, your grocery list. They help us know what we need to do, and they keep us focused. It is often when we are not focused that we become the most dysregulated. Answering those 4 questions, these are 3 questions. They're oldies but goodies. What's the work? How much work? And how will I know when I'm finished? And then you can add to that what comes next. But it doesn't have to be work. It can just be what's going to happen. What are we going to do? How much of it are we going to do? How will I know when we're finished with it, and what will come next? And then visual supports that can tell students what to do exactly when we're upset. And I'll give you some examples of those in a bit. Okay. And then this third antecedent group of antecedent approaches is the systematic implementation of mindfulness activities. So 3 mindful minutes 3 times per day. That kind of rule of 3s actually comes from the neuroscience literature. So it can be 3 minutes of deep breathing, 3 minutes of quiet music, 3 minutes of coloring or fine motor activities, whatever is very calming, 3 times per day. 2-handed fine motor tasks, even for older learners. So, painting by stickers and adult coloring books can be really good. And then some self-regulation, individual and group activities, which we'll talk about next. I would just like to ask you, I think it would be helpful for me, I should have done this at the beginning, if you could just put in the chat what kind of setting you work or live in. If you're a parent, that's helpful to me. If you work with adults, or if you work in a classroom setting, if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat, that would be great. Okay, so building on this concept of antecedent interventions, I'm going to talk about 2 categories of interventions. The first is tier 1, kind of tier 2 curricular approaches. So that would be those of you who work in schools. If you think about kind of those general classroom strategies and small group strategies, okay? And then we'll also talk about tier 3 interventions. So we're going to talk about like some group interventions, and then some really specific individualized interventions. So let me start. One, I'm not going to talk about this Be Calm. I included that website here. Again, you'll get it in the PowerPoint, but they have some really nice resources on their website, and they talk about co-regulation, the role of adults. And I noticed, I've read some of their research papers, but I noticed today when I was on their website that they're offering some training, and it's reasonably priced, like $65 a person. So if you had into some specific educators or even direct support providers, if you work in adult settings, it might be worth considering that. I'm not going to get into too much to that today, but I wanted to share that resource. And it's a federally funded research project that some of that work comes out of. It's based in North Carolina. Okay, the first thing I'm going to talk about is informal small group instruction. So I'm going to link something in the chat for you right now. Okay, here you go. This is a small group activity that I developed for some classroom teachers. I want you to keep in mind that you could easily adapt this for lots of different settings. Okay, so you could make it for students who have who are in 7th and 8th grade in a general ed setting. You could make it for students in preschool setting. I developed this for some kids, a teacher who was teaching in a self-contained setting. And I think she teaches 5th and 6th grade, but you could easily, if you work with adults, you could easily turn this into a group-based adult activity too. So I want you to just kind of keep in mind that, again, that first comment in sort of the critical area, or the 3 critical concepts, is people learn to be calm when they're calm. People develop self-regulation skills when they're regulated. So the purpose of this is you would implement a group like this on a regular basis, a couple times a day even, or once a day, a few times a week. And what you're going to do is teach you it combines this like systematic relaxation strategies, which is evidence-based practice for in the self-regulation literature, and kind of comes out of the mental health field, combined with some motor-based activity, both fine and gross motor activities. So this is an example of, and you're welcome to use this. If you adapt it, I'd love you to share it back with me so I can integrate it into the work I do. And the idea is we're really going to try to teach some of the metacognitive combined with some calming activities that people could use in different environments. So we're doing some systematic instruction that way. So you'd start with quiet music and stretching, and it's literally I would consider this a soft script. It's telling people what to say. You don't have to say it exactly like this. There's not magic. This is not these aren't there are some interventions where there are very specific magic words you need to say. That is not this. Okay. But we start with quiet music and stretching, and we want to teach people. So I want you right now, wherever you are, to put both your feet on the ground, and I want you to tense your body and feel that all the head to toe, and then just kind of relax it. And there are 2 reasons we do that. One, it helps people relax their body. And for individuals who have a hard time self-regulating, even kids without intellectual disabilities, okay, this is not like this is everybody. Knowing the difference and being able to recognize the difference in your body is really valuable. And starting with that very drastic, different feeling is a good place to start. Then we say to them, what is self-regulation? We're going to talk about what that means. So let me just tell you this down here. This is the schedule you would give to your students or anybody who was participating in it. And then these will be the words you say. So we're going to talk about self-regulation. Then we're going to do, and this sounds kind of silly, but it really is, we're teaching body control, which is related to mind control. We're going to do some tracing, some coloring and stickers, or whatever makes sense in your environment. And then again, the quiet music and stretching. So let me show you these tracing pages. Okay, again, there is nothing, I made this in 10 minutes, okay? This was meant to be an easy thing a teacher could do. So these were the tracing pages because that's what her students could work on. They're tracing, we start tracing horizontal lines with our finger. Then we were doing actually and then we did some vertical lines, we did some waves, and then we did our mountains. And then you can start to pair some deep breathing with it. Breathe in, breathe out, okay? And again, I will give these to you, the figure 8. Once we get kids who can do that, we can teach them to trace a figure 8 on their leg when they're upset, or we can teach them to trace the figure 8 on the table during a stressful time, okay? Then we have these coloring pages. For some kids, I just have them using a dauber to put one dot within each shape. Some kids can use a marker and they can color inside. Some kids are just it can be anything, but what we're trying to build is that movement to mind connection. And eventually we're going to start to connect and build in some deep breathing with these activities. And then what you see here, we've got some kiddos who just touch the dots. Okay, we've got some kids who will take one sticker and put one sticker on each dot. And what we're trying to get them to do, our adult language, is move slowly. And again, we are doing, I have several adults with who have more significant like gross motor planning challenges, who can get their bodies get really dysregulated. This is particular some autistic adults that I know and consider to be friends. And these activities are really calming to them when they are dysregulated. So doing it in a whole group, the reason we do it or in a small group when everybody's calm is that I'm going to have those activities. So Victoria, going back to your kind of comment about in a chaotic environment that can't be controlled, I might have a set of those materials with me, and we might have to go find a quiet spot where we can do them, take a break, and then we come back. But we can do that because we practiced that when you were already calm. Okay, so that's kind of that small group structure. And I really, really, really want to encourage you to start using these metacognitive phrases. I can control my body. I can take a deep breath in my mind. Whatever is helpful in your specific situation. But you can even teach adults, like educators, to use those for themselves. And to, if I was implementing these like this group with those activities, I'd be doing them myself. 1, as a model, and 2, to help build my self-regulation. Okay. And again, today, I probably could have used those strategies myself. Okay. Here is, I just want to show you another example of this. So a couple adults that I know have really big gross motor movements that when they're dysregulated. And so we were trying to figure out how do we kind of bring this small group idea with kind of some of that fine motor activity, especially when somebody has challenging fine motor, or when fine motor is challenging. And so we put it into this kind of a different structure where it's on the wall, and we help the individual. We really focus on them standing at that spot and building, again, in my mind, I can control my body. And when you do that, you're supporting, I can control my thoughts, I can control my emotions, and I can engage in this activity without somebody touching me. So there's like that feeling of accomplishment. And you would again, going back to that metacognitive coaching, you would have something posted like this: when I complete these stations, I am increasing my ability to focus my attention. I am developing control of my body. I'm working to be flexible. This is important because it helps me feel calm, focus my attention, and build the connection between my thinking and my actions. And then notice here, just like in that small group activity directions, I had told the staff what to say. Here, I'm telling the staff what to do. The staff will support me by staying behind me and out of my sight. That means don't hand over hand it. I need to be able to do this so it's my own. If I need a physical prompt, you can give me one, but from behind. Talking to me in a quiet voice and using small gestures or tapping my shoulder to remind me what is next. Okay, so again, this is kind of bringing together that small group idea, but when you have to make it a little bit bigger, when it can't happen at a table, for example. So you might have some one or two individuals who can do it at a table, but you might have somebody else who needs to do it on the wall. Okay. All right, let me pause there. I'm going to look in the chat. Please feel free to unmute and let me know if you have any questions. So I see we have some principals, we have adults, people working in adults, we have some parents. Thank you all for being here. Anybody have any questions? Okay. The next strategy that I wanted to share with you is called self-regulated strategy development. So this is more those of you who are educators and in classroom academic settings. So SRSD is one of the actually most evidence-based practices for supporting writing, and there's starting to be some real evidence to support reading comprehension with the use of SRSD approaches also. Writing instruction in general is really about self-regulation and executive function. So any really strong writing intervention can be a very valuable self-regulation and executive function tool if we are mindful and explicit and intentional in our language to help kids see how they're learning those skills through that instruction. We don't have enough time to kind of go too deeply into SRSD, but there's two things here. One, this is a free resource that that's where this comes from. This Paltree resource is from this link. And then there's a video that talks about SRSD. If you email me, if you are a teacher and want more information about this, I've got a couple articles in my literature folder that I could share with you easily. The steps in SRSD are here. So developing background knowledge, talk about writing, and goal setting. See, that's what is sort of unique about SRSD in terms of writing is that, and this is different, like if you've done the Writing Revolution or any of those other workshops that have great strategies, what SRSD does is get kids to identify their own strengths and set goals related to their writing. So I might need to work on adding details, or maybe I personally get too in the weeds. So whatever it is that they need to work on, they are going to set a goal and then self-monitor their writing for that goal. Then it involves modeling. This memorizing is the PAL plus tree. So plan, organize, write, and then gives you tells you the tree, the topic, sentence, the reasons, explain the reasons, and then the ending. Of course, that's one particular writing structure, right? So it would be different for others. And then another really significant part of SRSD is kind of the graduated guidance or gradual release approach. SRSD in intellectual and developmental disabilities is probably one of the most evidence-based practices for teaching kids with autism to write. And Graham and Harris are kind of like the authors around this. And it's really effective for kids who are like that, kids with autism who are that 5th grade and up, who are really learning to become writers. One of the things about SRSD is that it's a really highly structured approach. And again, you're teaching kids to organize their thoughts. So it's like, oh, you're talking about writing in the self-regulation session, but yes, it's because writing is a highly self-regulated activity, and learning to write does really support that self-regulation and teaches kids to set goals. So again, I don't have enough time. We could have a whole session on just this, on writing and self-regulation, but I did want to throw it in there, especially for those of you who work in the gen ed world, because it's a really effective approach. And there's some great free resources and like YouTube videos about it. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is building individual self-regulation systems. So I'm going to stop sharing again, and I'm going to give you 2 tools or documents that can guide you in developing these systems. They're evidence-based practices. They're available online, and I just pulled them down. But And then I'm going to talk about them in a way less technical way. So those documents are the technical documents that you can print out and use to kind of help you develop a system. I will not use that language because it was more practical for us to look at it this way. Okay, so when you think about building an individual self-regulation system, one of the best ways that we have found in our center and through all my work with teachers is through level systems and calming routines. A couple critical factors. So what are the components of a level system and calming routine? One, clear expectations, having those written down. Two, the actual level system. And three, the specific calming routine. Given what you know, or given the three key ideas, one, people learn to be calm when they're calm. Two, adults have to be calm for kids to be calm. Self-regulation starts with us. And three, co-regulation is critical. I want you to think about those three things as we go through this. So one, if you're going to use a system like this, it has to be used in the beginning proactively. In places where I am interacting with an individual who has really significant challenging behavior, the first thing I'm going to do is just ask the staff to review this level system and calming routine with the individual 3 to 5 times a day when the person is calm. I'm not asking them to do anything else with this. Start with just the level system and calming routine and talking about it on regular basis. And when the person is in green, I'm saying to them, hey, I see you're in green. We're doing great. I know that because it looks like this. I think you probably feel, okay, but that's it. But we are going to start by really getting clear about the expectations and reviewing that, again, 3 to 5 times a day. Okay, so then, and let me just pause there. I should say this too. The calming routine is kind of the replacement behavior. We might be teaching other replacement behaviors to like specific targeted behavior, but in this situation, the calming routine is the expected behavior when somebody gets into that even yellow, orange, red kind of level. Then, all right, so we identify the target desired behaviors, and that includes our expectations and the calming routine. 2, we develop a tool to support the individual to understand their emotions, feelings, and behaviors. So this is the tool, and we make it visual. So remember when I said use visuals to help people understand how they feel? This is kind of the foundation for that. And you can make this very visual. It doesn't have to be printed words. One thing I want to say, and there are people who will disagree with this, so I acknowledge that and I respect opinions. In my experience, in the beginning, if somebody has a very hard time regulating themselves, giving them choices of how to be regulated when they are really heightened is not very effective. I might say, I see you're in orange, you can do this or you can do that, but it's very limited choices. I'm not going to show you a whole choice board to when you are heightened. Okay, that's something I can do when you are calm, and I can watch and pay attention to the things that are calming for you. But it would be like if I was really upset, which happens, and somebody said, do you want to do these 6 things? I'd be like, I don't know, just choose for me. I don't care. Somebody just tell me. Okay, or I might know I don't want to do that, but it can be really hard to make a choice when you are very heightened. So keep that in mind. That's why what I will do section is so important. And again, you could have 1 or 2 choices for each of the different colors, but you're going to really keep it in the beginning very directed, because again, if you go back to, I know what to expect, I feel safe, I know my anxiety's down when I can predict something. This is what helps me make that prediction. Even this section on how my teachers will help me, that helps me predict what's going to happen, okay? And then the third thing here is we need to systematically teach the system, including calming activities. And we do that using a systematic gradual release approach. So let's look at this. Okay. There are 3 components of a level system: the expectations, the actual level system, the calming routine. And I want you to kind of think about this in the rule of 3. 1, initially we're going to review, recognize, remind. In the beginning, when I'm teaching, we're just reviewing. We're just talking about this 3 to 5 times a day, and I'm recognizing the level you're in. I see you're in green. Awesome. It looks like you're feeling good. I think you might be yellow. I could even hold up a yellow card. I think that because, or if somebody's in red, orange, red, I see you're in red. We will, and then we just direct. Okay, but I'm not in the beginning. I am not whipping this thing out like, let's look at your calming routine when somebody's escalated. And this is really true, because I'm going to tell you, kids have said, really told me where I could put that calming routine document. Okay, like there's no one, somebody's heightened, they don't want to see this thing, especially in the beginning. I think there are a few of you on here who work with kids who are individuals across the lifespan who have really significant, who their behavior really challenges their inclusion. If I was working with someone at that level, the individuals who come to like our Impact Day program, who have the most significant challenging behavior, we kind of get in a half an hour rotation where it's like levels and calming, preferred activity, small, something else, maybe a walk or something, repeat. And it's like, if it's intense, we're doing this on repeat. In a school setting, that doesn't usually translate. So a lot of times we're pairing it up with arrival, lunch or recess, and end of day. So just kind of keep that in mind. It's going to look different depending on your setting and the level of support you have. So again, review and recognize that that becomes first. And then the third thing is, once we've practiced this, okay, then I'm going to remind, I see you're in yellow, check your level, check your levels. Or I heard you make this noise. That tells me you might be getting upset. Can you take a deep breath? Or what does your tool tell you to do? Okay, do you need to use a tool? One of our staff, a teacher actually in a college class, I saw her do this recently and thought it was really powerful. And I sort of thought, well, if a college professor could do this, I feel like this could be applied in a lot of different places. And she just said, oh, do you need to use a tool because you seem like you're getting really aggravated? And I was like, oh, that was pretty powerful. So, and the person just got up and took a break. No, I don't know if they had planned that or what, but I thought that seemed to be, I was like, that's really nice. And it can be very quiet. It doesn't have to be like called out in front of everybody. Then lastly, once we've practiced this, so like if I was in a gen ed setting and I had a kid who I practiced this with on repeat, and one thing about that is I'm going to have them figure out a calming routine that they can do in the back corner of my classroom, or that they can discreetly leave and go find a different place, a planned place, obviously, and do it there. Then when this prompt, wait, help is just prompt. Okay, you're in yellow, use a tool, prompt. It's like, when we say prompt, it might even almost be like a direction. Check your level system. And that just becomes just like that, real quiet. I see you need to use your tool, or I see you need to check your level. Or another strategy, and I should have printed these out if I had thought about it, is we've got teachers who we just print out green, yellow, red, orange, red, whatever the kid's system is. And I might just go put that card on a piece of paper, that color, on their table, and they just take it. And they take it and walk somewhere. And if they take it and walk somewhere and hand that card to somebody else, that whoever's getting it, sometimes it's even whoever the assistant, whoever runs the front office, will be like, oh, I see, we need a whatever. And then it's just part of the routine. Those strategies, those skills we practice. So like if I have and again, Victoria, I keep thinking about your comment about in community settings, especially, but this really rings true for schools too, is that when a person is calm, we will say to them, oh, let's practice. Let's pretend like you're an orange, and we're going to practice doing your orange calming routine. And I actually didn't put this on there, but a critical thing is that when a kid is heightened and they use their calming routine, we are going to reinforce them. Okay, as long as they keep themselves safe and everybody else safe. Now, again, this depends on the environment, but in many environments where I go to work, they can be saying whatever word they want. But if they are physically safe and keeping everybody else safe and using their calming routine, we are going to provide a high level of reinforcement for that. Okay. Now that might be different in different settings, and I would never presume to say that I know what it should look like in different settings. But just keep that in mind. And when we proactively practice it, when the person is calm, we're also going to be giving a lot of reinforcement for using those calming routines. So it could be whatever is keep in mind, again, reinforcement's a whole nother session, but it's whatever's reinforcing to the individual. It's not what's reinforcing to us, but that reinforcement has to be based on what that individual likes. So it could be a short video, it could be something to eat, it could be whatever it is that's reinforcing to them. I often say, if the behavior is high enough, giving reinforcement should be reinforcing to all of us, because we're going to keep the behavior down. We should all feel better about that. And then I just want to end with this, which is whatever the calming strategies are that you are going to use to help an individual self-regulate, they have to be calming to them. And sometimes people say, like, I have one individual who loves music and like Taylor Swift. So they'll say, well, if they're in orange, why am I giving them Taylor Swift? Well, because all of us, none of us are going to get calmed down if we have to do an activity that we don't like, right? The activities that are calming are things that will calm us as individuals, and not necessarily what's calming for me is not the same as what's calming for Sadie and what's calming for all of the rest of you. So these calming routines really need to be individualized. So I'm going to stop there. I could talk about this all day. So let me pause and just open it up for questions, and just ask you, as we're taking any questions, if you could, I'm going to go back through sort of these big ideas, and then I will ask you to, if there's one thing that you would take from today that you could apply tomorrow, what would it be? Okay, so if you could put that in the chat for us, and then also if you have any questions. Okay, in summary, today we talked about self-regulation, and there were 3 big ideas that we talked about. We talked about the key concept of people only learn to be calm when they're calm. Adults, staff have to be calm and regulated for individuals to be calm and regulated. And then co-regulation really is critical when we're supporting self-regulation development for individuals who have intellectual and developmental disabilities, who have complex behavior. And that's really true for anybody who has complex behavior or communication challenges. We talked about some really specific strategies today. We talked about some small group activities. We discussed self-regulated strategy development. And then we talked about these level systems and calming routines. If you have any questions, please let us know. I'd really love it if you put one thing in the chat that you can do tomorrow, because we know if you don't identify that one thing, it's hard to take any of it away with you. And as always, if you have any questions, please send me an email, and we will definitely share the PowerPoint with you after today. Thanks, Erica. Thanks, Sadie.
Yes, thank you. I picked up some tips. I'm going to try them out.
For yourself, for me.
I'm also going to put in the chat a brief survey. I've been doing this after every session. If you have a couple minutes, and you can fill that out. But I'll also include that link with this PowerPoint and the recorded training, so that you guys can refer back to it. And those handouts that Christy put in the chat, I'll include those in the email too. And then in that survey, it also asks if you need continuing education units. So if you do, definitely fill that out so I can provide a certificate for your attendance. So I think that's it. Thank you so much, Christy.
Thanks, Sadie.
I'm just checking to see if there's any questions coming up. Just more ideas to walk away with. Great. Yes, got a lot out of it. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everybody. Go take a walk and do some self-regulation in this beautiful weather. Take care, everyone.